Did you know that for the Maasai, one wrong step in the morning could be fatal? Before sunrise, the savannah is alive with predators, and every movement is a test of instinct, courage, and survival. This story will take you inside the life of a Maasai warrior for one day, a day that starts with a sprint to the watering hole and ends with the silent shadows of the night. You will feel the fear, the exhilaration, and the unspoken rules that govern life and death among these legendary people. Before we start our story about Maasai tribe, get into bed more comfortably, relax, you can turn on white noise in the background for more relaxation. Also, don't forget to support me with a like and a subscription. I'm always curious about where and at what time people are listening to me, write in the comments. Sweet dreams. The night was a living presence, thick and heavy, stretching endlessly over the savannah. Stars hung in the sky like distant fires, indifferent to the dangers lurking below. Every sound carried a warning, the soft rustle of grass, the distant call of nocturnal birds, the sigh of the wind through acacia trees. In the village, small huts made of sticks and cow dung seemed fragile against the immensity of the wild beyond. Kito moved carefully, feeling the cool earth beneath his feet. The hut's floor was rough and uneven, each stone a reminder that comfort had no place here. Survival required awareness, a constant understanding of what could wait in the darkness. Every morning began the same way, stepping into a world where predators roamed freely, where life and death were separated by instinct and speed. The first light was still hours away. The horizon remained a deep shade of indigo, and the world was painted in shadows. Every shape was uncertain, every movement deliberate. The water in the nearby river, essential for life, carried a silent threat. It was the source of nourishment and the lure for lions, leopards, and hyenas. The scent of prey mingled with the earthy aroma of the wet soil, marking the territory where only the alert could survive. Kito's heart beat steadily, in rhythm with the quiet pulse of the land. The wind whispered secrets of the savannah, brushing against his skin, carrying scents of distant prey and unseen hunters. Each step toward the river was measured, careful, almost ceremonial. The path was familiar yet dangerous, a narrow corridor between safety and peril. The grass swayed, a sea of green shadows, hiding both the small creatures that could startle him and the large predators that could end his life in a heartbeat. Time seemed suspended. The world was neither fully dark nor illuminated, caught in the fleeting moment between night and dawn. The forest of tall grasses was alive with quiet movements, the small rustling of insects, the occasional snap of a twig under a hidden animal's paw. Kito felt the weight of the spear in his hand, its tip catching the faint light as he adjusted his grip. It was not only a weapon but a connection to generations who had walked this land before him, each step echoing the lessons of survival they had left behind. The air grew warmer as the horizon hinted at the first touch of sun. Shadows shifted, and with them, the sense of safety seemed to recede. Each breath was careful, each heartbeat deliberate. The river waited ahead, shimmering faintly in the dim light, an oasis surrounded by danger. For the Maasai, approaching it was never casual. Every instinct, every learned reflex, had to be present. The day had begun, but for Kito, it was a day in which every second mattered, where the smallest mistake could have the largest consequence. And so he moved forward, silent, measured, fully aware that in this world, there was no margin for error. Life in the Maasai tribe began before the sun, in the shadows of the savannah, where courage, awareness, and speed were the only guarantees of survival. The first light of dawn stretched across the horizon, painting the savannah in muted golds and soft pinks. The shadows of the tall grasses lengthened and swayed, hiding the shapes of both prey and predators. Kito's body moved as it had been trained for years, muscles responding instinctively to the uneven earth beneath his feet. Every step was precise, measured, a balance between speed and caution. The air was thick with the scent of wet earth and wild animals. Birds took flight in sudden bursts, their wings slicing the morning air with a flurry of noise that seemed almost deafening in the quiet of the approaching day. The river ahead was the destination, shimmering faintly in the half-light, promising both life and the threat of death. A single misstep here could draw the attention of a lurking predator, waiting for a careless moment to strike. Kito's heartbeat matched the rhythm of his movements. His lungs drew in the crisp morning air, and his body absorbed the tension of the landscape. Every sense was alert. The distant roar of a lion echoed across the plains, vibrating through the soil and reminding him that the savannah belonged equally to the hunter and the hunted. The tall grasses whispered with the passage of unseen animals, each rustle a subtle warning. The ground was uneven, dotted with hidden rocks and shallow dips. Kito adjusted instinctively, his feet barely making a sound. Time seemed to slow as his focus narrowed to the path ahead, every shadow and every movement a potential threat. The riverbank appeared closer with each step, the glittering water reflecting the growing light of day. Survival depended not only on speed but also on awareness, on reading the land as one would read a map etched by predators and prey alike. As he neared the edge of the river, Kito's senses sharpened further. The glint of sunlight on water revealed subtle movements, small ripples, a sudden splash, that could signal either life or danger. The Maasai had always known that reaching the river first was a matter of life and death, and this morning was no exception. The air was filled with tension, the quiet anticipation of a landscape that was both familiar and unpredictable. Reaching the water's edge, Kito crouched briefly, scanning for movement. The river was a mirror of the sky above, but beneath its surface, creatures stirred, and along its banks, predators could appear without warning. The world seemed to hold its breath, and Kito moved with the precision and confidence of someone who had learned the rhythms of this wild place. Each heartbeat, each breath, each step had brought him to this point, and yet the danger was far from over. The savannah was waking, but it did so cautiously. Every shadow and every sound carried meaning, and Kito understood that surviving this morning was merely the first challenge of the day. Life among the Maasai demanded vigilance, endurance, and courage, and the river was only the beginning. The river shimmered under the growing light, its surface broken only by the occasional ripple of fish or the careful steps of a grazing antelope. Kito moved along its edge with measured caution, his eyes scanning the horizon where tall grasses met the distant trees. The savannah was alive in ways invisible to those who did not know how to look, the subtle bend of a blade of grass, the faint smell of disturbed soil, the whisper of wind carrying distant sounds. Each was a message, each a warning. Predators lingered beyond sight, their presence felt more than seen. Lions, sleek and patient, watched from hidden shadows, muscles coiled for sudden action. Hyenas prowled the edges of the grasslands, their eyes glinting with the promise of opportunity. Even the smaller creatures of the savannah, the cunning jackals, the silent snakes, were reminders that danger was everywhere, that no moment was safe. Kito had learned to move like the wind, light and deliberate, flowing through the landscape without disturbing it more than necessary. The riverbank was a narrow corridor between life and death. Kito bent low, each movement purposeful, a silent dance with the unseen eyes that followed him. The reflection of the rising sun painted the water in streaks of gold, making shadows longer, sharper, and easier to mistake for threats. Every step was a test of awareness, every breath was a negotiation with the wild. Kito's mind traced the paths of animals he had seen before, the footprints of gazelles, the disturbed soil of a predator's lair, the faint scent of waterbuck moving upstream. Survival depended on understanding not just the immediate surroundings, but the patterns of life that extended across the plains. Every day demanded this vigilance, every misjudgment could be fatal. He reached a bend in the river, where the current slowed and the grass thinned slightly. The change in landscape was subtle, but it carried a new risk. Predators could approach from the tall grass just beyond view, and there was little cover for retreat. Kito's steps became slower, more deliberate, his senses stretching outward in every direction. The river's gentle murmuring was a constant companion, but in it, he could sense the presence of other life, silent watchers who measured him as carefully as he measured them. As the sun climbed higher, the savannah began to reveal more of itself. Shapes emerged from shadows, distant zebras moving in cautious harmony, a lone bird taking flight in a sudden panic, the ripple of water disturbed by creatures unseen. Each observation was a thread in the tapestry of survival, and Kito wove himself carefully through it. Awareness, speed, and respect for the land were his guides. The day had only just begun, yet Kito already felt the weight of its challenges pressing against him. The river was crossed, the immediate threat behind him, but the wilderness stretched endlessly in every direction. Life among the Maasai demanded constant attention, constant movement, constant courage, and he understood that every moment was both a gift and a trial. The savannah was slowly awakening, the soft glow of morning revealing the contours of the land. Kito moved toward the heart of the village, where the small huts clustered together like a protective web. Smoke from morning fires rose in thin spirals, carrying the scent of burning wood and the faint aroma of milk and blood, the staple of Maasai life. The village itself was quiet, but alive with a rhythm older than memory, a rhythm that guided every step, every decision. The warriors gathered near the central clearing, bodies lean and taut, their movements precise and economical. There was no need for words, the morning ritual was ingrained, a silent choreography repeated countless times. Each warrior carried a spear or a club, weapons sharpened and ready, their tips reflecting the growing light. These tools were extensions of the body, as familiar and necessary as the heartbeat that propelled them forward. Kito observed the others, noting the subtle differences in posture, the way some adjusted their grips, the minute shifts in balance as they prepared for the day. Every warrior carried the knowledge of survival, the lessons of the elders passed down through decades. The tribe's survival depended on coordination, awareness, and an unspoken understanding of danger. Even a single misstep could compromise the safety of all. The village itself was a sanctuary, a fragile barrier against the wild. Children moved quietly between huts, mimicking the actions of adults, learning without words the delicate dance of life in a world governed by predators and scarcity. The elders sat nearby, observing with eyes that had seen countless seasons, every wrinkle a testament to endurance and wisdom. Kito felt the pulse of the gathering as a tangible presence. The air was filled with anticipation, a shared awareness that today, like every day, would test skill, courage, and instinct. The first task was the hunt, a controlled yet perilous venture into the wilds beyond the safety of the village. Preparation required focus, even the slightest lapse could invite disaster. As the sun rose higher, the shadows of the huts stretched across the ground, merging with the grasses beyond. The warriors, including Kito, adjusted their positions, preparing to move. The air was electric with unspoken tension, a reminder that the savannah was patient, but unforgiving. Every movement, every glance, every breath carried significance. The rhythm of life and death beat steadily through the village, and Kito's body, honed by years of training, was ready to match it. With the village behind him, the plain stretched out in all directions, a living, breathing landscape of danger and possibility. Kito's mind was alert, senses sharpened, every step measured. The day was only beginning, yet the challenges were already immense. The Maasai way demanded strength, awareness, and unyielding courage, and Kito knew that this day, like all others, would test him to the limit. The village faded behind Kito as he stepped onto the open plains. The grasses swayed gently in the morning breeze, their shadows stretching across the uneven ground. Every movement carried a quiet significance, the land was alive, observing, judging, and waiting. Kito's eyes scanned the horizon, noting the shapes of distant trees, the glint of water, and the subtle disturbances in the soil that betrayed the passage of animals. Each mark, each sound, was a message he had learned to read from years of practice. The early sun bathed the savannah in muted gold, and the warmth began to seep into his skin. The air was thick with the scents of the wild, damp earth, fresh grass, the faint tang of distant predators, and the unmistakable musk of prey animals moving cautiously through the morning light. Kito's heart beat steadily, attuned to the rhythm of the land. Every breath, every step, was measured, careful, deliberate. The path ahead was fraught with unseen danger. Lions and leopards had territories that overlapped with the river and the grazing grounds, their presence felt more than seen. Kito's movements were silent, flowing with the terrain, each step cushioned against the earth, each pause deliberate. The savannah demanded patience, alertness, and respect. One wrong move could bring a predator's gaze upon him, and the consequences would be swift and final. He approached a small clearing where the grass grew shorter and the earth was firm. The tracks of a herd of gazelles were visible, pressed into the soft soil overnight. Their recent passage hinted at life and opportunity, but also risk. Predators followed silently, often unseen until the moment of attack. Kito moved cautiously, tracing the faint impressions left behind, understanding the patterns of movement and behavior that had allowed generations of Maasai to survive in this relentless environment. The distant roar of a lion vibrated across the plains, a reminder that he was never alone. The wild watched, tested, and challenged. Kito's body reacted instinctively, muscles coiled, senses sharpened. The thrill of awareness mixed with a constant undercurrent of tension, the fine line between life and death stretched across every step, every glance. As he ventured further, the plains opened into a vast expanse where the tall grass formed waves under the wind. The heat of the rising sun began to intensify, and Kito adjusted his pace, balancing speed with stealth. Each movement was a calculated decision, the land offered no mercy for hesitation. Even the birds in the trees, flitting nervously from branch to branch, were indicators of unseen threats. The morning hunt had begun in earnest, but Kito knew that surviving this phase was merely a portion of the day's challenge. Beyond tracking and preparation lay the moments when instinct, skill, and courage would collide with the raw force of the wild. Each step brought him closer to that reckoning, and yet, every movement reinforced the unspoken truth of the Maasai way: to exist here required constant vigilance, unwavering focus, and a respect for the unpredictable power of nature. The plains stretched endlessly, golden and deceptive in their calm. Kito moved with deliberate caution, each step guided by instinct honed over years of training. The rustle of grass and the distant calls of birds were no longer mere background sounds, they were warnings, signposts in a landscape that demanded attention. Every movement of the head, every subtle shift of the body, was a silent communication with the wild. A sudden snap of a twig caught his attention. Kito froze instantly, his body coiled like a spring. The sound could have been made by a small animal, or it could have been the approach of something far more dangerous. The sunlight glinted briefly off the tip of his spear as he adjusted his grip, ready for whatever emerged from the shadows. The savannah had a way of testing patience, and Kito knew the importance of waiting, watching, and listening before acting. The air carried a mix of scents, the earthy aroma of disturbed soil, the musky hint of predators, and the subtle fragrance of grazers moving through the tall grass. Kito's eyes scanned the horizon, noting irregular movements, the gentle sway of vegetation, and the faint impressions in the ground left by hoofed creatures. Each observation added to a mental map of potential threats and opportunities, a skill that separated the prepared from the unprepared. Ahead, a herd of gazelles grazed cautiously, their movements sudden and alert. Kito observed from a distance, knowing that the slightest disturbance could send them fleeing, attracting the attention of predators. Lions and leopards often shadowed these herds, invisible until the moment of attack. The tension in the air was palpable, a mixture of anticipation and caution that mirrored his own heartbeat. He continued forward, careful to leave no trace of his presence. Each footfall was measured, each breath controlled. The sun climbed higher, and the shadows of the grasses shortened, revealing more of the landscape and with it, potential threats. The proximity of predators could not always be sensed by sight alone, intuition and experience were vital. Kito's body responded instinctively, alert to the faintest indication of movement or sound that could signal danger. Then came the unmistakable scent of a predator, rich, musky, and close. Kito's senses heightened immediately. Every muscle tensed, every nerve alert. The river and village were still behind him, but here, in the open savannah, survival depended entirely on skill, timing, and the silent understanding of the land. The predators could strike without warning, and in this moment, the delicate balance between hunter and hunted became starkly clear. The morning had unfolded as expected in its unpredictability. Each step, each observation, each careful decision brought Kito closer to understanding the true rhythm of life among the Maasai. The wild was patient, unrelenting, and exacting in its demands. Survival was not guaranteed, and the lessons of the savannah were learned only through awareness, courage, and respect for the power that surrounded him. The grasses shifted in the wind, revealing shapes that had been hidden moments before. Kito moved with quiet determination, every step calculated, every motion deliberate. The faint glimmer of sunlight on a distant tree betrayed nothing, yet hinted at movement beneath its branches. His senses were attuned to the subtle cues of the land, the trembling of leaves, the faint scent of fur, the soft vibrations carried through the earth. Ahead, a lioness emerged from the shadows, her golden coat blending seamlessly with the savannah. Her gaze was fixed on the horizon, ears twitching, muscles coiled in readiness. Kito froze, aware that the predator's attention could shift in an instant, and that any sudden movement on his part could trigger a chase he was not prepared to survive. Time slowed as he assessed the distance, the angle of approach, the subtle shifts in the animal's posture. The riverbank, though behind him, had already proven treacherous, and now the open plains demanded even more vigilance. The lioness moved gracefully, each step deliberate, her body a perfect instrument of instinct and power. Kito's heart pounded in rhythm with the distant thud of her paws on the soft earth. Survival was no longer a matter of theory, it was immediate, visceral, and absolute. He adjusted his stance, lowering his center of gravity, his spear held lightly but ready. Every fiber of his being was alert, a silent conversation between predator and prey unfolding across the golden grass. The wind carried scents in unpredictable currents, and Kito understood that a single miscalculation could end the day, perhaps even his life. Other creatures reacted to the presence of the predator. Birds took flight in sudden bursts, their calls piercing the still morning air. A small herd of gazelles froze, ears pointed, bodies tense, their instincts as sharp as Kito's own. The savannah was a network of awareness, a web where every participant played a role in the balance between life and death. Kito remained motionless, allowing the lioness to pass without drawing attention to himself. Each second stretched, heavy with anticipation, until the predator moved onward, uninterested in him for now, yet reminding him that the world beyond the village had no regard for human presence. The encounter left a lingering tension in the air, a reminder that survival required not only courage and strength but also patience and observation. The plains resumed their quiet rhythm, but Kito's body retained the memory of the encounter, the heightened senses, the alertness, the knowledge that at any moment, danger could return from any direction. This was the nature of life among the Maasai, every day a challenge, every moment a lesson, and every encounter a test of instinct and endurance. The savannah unfolded before Kito like a vast, living puzzle. Every shadow, every sway of grass, every distant movement was part of a network of life and death that required constant attention. The morning hunt had begun in earnest, and with it, the real test of skill, patience, and instinct. Kito's muscles were coiled, ready to respond at a moment's notice, his eyes scanning the landscape for subtle clues hidden among the vegetation. Small tracks led away from the riverbank, faint impressions of hooves pressed into damp earth. Gazelles, wildebeests, and other grazers had passed this way, leaving traces that spoke volumes to trained eyes. Kito followed quietly, adjusting his pace to avoid making noise, moving in rhythm with the land. The earth beneath his feet was uneven, dotted with hidden dips and rocks, each step demanding precision. The distant cries of birds and the rustle of leaves marked the presence of life, some prey, some predator, all part of a delicate balance. Kito observed every detail, reading the landscape like an open book. The wind shifted, carrying scents that were invisible but unmistakable to those attuned to the savannah. The smell of fresh spoor, of damp grass, of animals brushing against each other, told a story that required no words. As he drew closer to the grazing area, a sudden movement caught his attention. A small herd of gazelles froze, ears pointed, bodies tense, aware of an unseen presence. Kito mirrored their caution, crouching low, blending with the grass, letting his instincts guide him. Survival depended on timing, on understanding the rhythm of the land, and on the ability to move as silently as the wind. The sun rose higher, casting sharper shadows that revealed the terrain's subtle variations. Rocks, depressions, and hidden pathways became more visible, but they also gave predators places to hide. Kito advanced cautiously, every step deliberate, every breath controlled. His spear, an extension of his will, was ready to strike if necessary, though today the focus was observation, patience, and understanding rather than confrontation. The wild was teaching him again, as it had taught countless Maasai before him. Each moment carried lessons in vigilance, endurance, and respect for the creatures that shared the plains. Kito's heartbeat synchronized with the rhythm of the hunt, each thump a reminder of the precarious balance between life and death. The savannah was vast, its dangers ever present, and every step forward was a commitment to mastering the skills that had ensured the survival of his people for generations. With the herd in sight and predators lurking in hidden corners, Kito understood the stakes. The hunt was no simple pursuit, it was a delicate negotiation with the land, a test of skill, awareness, and courage that would define the morning, and perhaps the day itself. The challenge had only begun, and the savannah waited patiently for him to move wisely. The herd of gazelles grazed with careful vigilance, their ears twitching at every distant sound. Kito advanced slowly, crouching low, blending into the waves of golden grass. Each step was a negotiation with the earth beneath him, each movement deliberate and precise. The savannah demanded patience, speed alone could betray his presence. A sudden rustle nearby made Kito freeze. His senses sharpened instantly. The sound was faint, almost imperceptible, but it spoke of life moving in the shadows. A leopard, sleek and unseen, slinked through the taller grass a few dozen meters away, its body coiled, muscles tense, ready for a hunt of its own. The predator's gaze, though not fixed on Kito, radiated potential danger. A single misstep could draw its attention in a heartbeat. Kito adjusted his stance, lowering his center of gravity, careful to keep every movement silent. His spear, light in his grip yet deadly in its potential, was ready. Every instinct honed over years of observation and training came alive. The savannah had no mercy for mistakes, and the predator lurking nearby was a stark reminder of that reality. The gazelles continued to graze, unaware of the silent threat moving through the grass. Kito observed their patterns, the way they shifted weight, the subtle signals of awareness that indicated potential danger. He mirrored their caution, staying low, minimizing movement, letting his instincts dictate the pace. The air was filled with tension, the quiet hum of life and death vibrating through every blade of grass. The leopard paused, scenting the air, muscles tensed as if feeling the presence of another creature. Kito remained motionless, heart steady, breath controlled, blending into the land like another element of the savannah. The predator's attention shifted, and the moment passed without incident, leaving behind only the echo of near danger. The encounter reinforced the unspoken rules of the plains: vigilance, patience, and respect were the only guarantees of survival. Kito moved again, inching closer to the herd, every sense alert. Each step carried the weight of experience and the quiet knowledge that life here was measured in moments of awareness and restraint. The sun climbed higher, casting sharper light across the landscape. Shadows shortened, revealing more of the terrain, but also highlighting the constant presence of unseen observers. Kito knew that this first close call was only the beginning. The savannah's lessons were unending, and each challenge demanded focus, courage, and skill. Every moment was a negotiation with the wild, every heartbeat a reminder that survival among the Maasai was a delicate balance between instinct, patience, and the unforgiving reality of the predator-filled plains. The herd of gazelles moved cautiously across the plains, their sleek bodies alert to every subtle shift in the grass and sky. Kito followed, crouched low, moving with deliberate, silent steps that made him part of the landscape rather than an intruder. Each step required precision, each breath measured. The savannah was alive with movement and sound, and he could feel the pulse of life around him as if the earth itself were watching. The sunlight grew stronger, glinting off the dew still clinging to the tall grasses, creating a shimmering veil that both revealed and concealed the movements of the animals. Kito adjusted his course constantly, using the landscape to his advantage: patches of taller grass for cover, slight depressions in the soil to hide his shadow, and the natural undulations of the earth to mask his approach. Ahead, the gazelles paused, their heads raised, ears angled toward the faintest noise. Kito froze as the herd shifted nervously. Even a whisper of movement could draw attention. He crouched lower, moving as though he were part of the earth itself, a shadow in a world of gold and green. The sun's warmth pressed on his skin, but he ignored it. Every muscle was tense, every sense heightened. Suddenly, a soft crack broke the rhythm, a tiny, almost imperceptible snap of a twig beneath his foot. The gazelles reacted immediately, their bodies stiffening, muscles coiled for flight. Kito remained motionless, relying on the herd's uncertainty to remain unnoticed. Moments passed in tense silence, every second stretching longer than the last. The savannah seemed to hold its breath along with him, the delicate balance between predator and prey suspended in the morning air. Once the herd relaxed, resuming their cautious grazing, Kito pressed forward again. Each movement brought him closer to understanding the rhythm of the plains, the ways prey moved, the signs of nearby predators, the hidden dangers that could strike without warning. Awareness was survival, the ability to read the land was as critical as speed or strength. Inching closer, Kito sensed the presence of another predator nearby. A hyena's faint laughter carried over the distance, a reminder that the plains were never empty and safety was always temporary. The herd could scatter at any moment, or worse, he could become the focus of a predator's attention. Every step now was calculated, each decision deliberate, guided by instinct and experience. The morning hunt was no simple pursuit. It was a test of patience, awareness, and endurance. Kito understood that each movement, each second, could determine whether he survived or became a part of the savannah's cycle of life and death. The plains were unforgiving, and his every action had consequences. Yet, despite the danger, he pressed onward, attuned to the land, the animals, and the rhythm that dictated survival among the Maasai. The herd was closer now, their bodies tense, muscles coiled like springs ready to launch at the slightest signal of danger. Kito moved with extreme care, each footfall deliberate, every movement planned. The savannah seemed to narrow around him, the golden grasses forming corridors that guided his approach yet offered no real protection. The sun had climbed high, and the heat pressed against his skin, but he remained focused, every sense sharpened to the smallest detail. A sudden rustle to his left made him freeze instantly. Kito's instincts screamed caution. The sound came from the shadows of a nearby thicket, the hidden movement of a predator lurking silently. He could smell it in the air, a pungent, musky odor, a combination of raw power and hunger. The creature had chosen to observe rather than attack, but its presence alone was enough to remind him of the razor-thin line between life and death on the plains. The gazelles had noticed nothing, their heads lowered as they grazed, unaware of the predator's proximity. Kito crouched even lower, adjusting his balance to remain as inconspicuous as possible. The predator shifted slightly, muscles rippling beneath its spotted coat, and the faint crack of a branch under its paw sent a jolt of tension through the air. Kito's heartbeat matched the rhythm of the earth beneath him, steady and deliberate, ready to react in an instant. Moving slowly, he adjusted his position, taking advantage of the taller grasses to conceal his approach. Every movement was calculated, even the slight wind on his skin was a signal to remain cautious. The predator watched, poised, a silent sentinel of the savannah's unforgiving rules. Kito understood that in these moments, patience was as important as skill. A single misjudgment could trigger a chase or worse. The heat intensified as the sun rose higher, casting sharper shadows across the plains and revealing every undulation in the terrain. The gazelles shifted nervously, their instincts tuned to threats Kito could barely detect. He mirrored their attention, eyes scanning for the smallest movement, ears attuned to the faintest whisper of sound. The predator remained still, its gaze following every subtle motion, and the balance of this moment hung delicately between survival and catastrophe. Every step, every second, was a lesson in vigilance. Kito felt the tension in his muscles, the pulse of his heartbeat, and the awareness of the predator's silent presence pressing against him. The plains were alive, and today they demanded his full attention. To move too quickly, too carelessly, would mean instant failure. Yet still, he pressed on, blending with the land, learning the unspoken rhythm of life and death that governed every inch of the savannah. The encounter left him with heightened senses, a reminder that survival in the Maasai way was not just about skill or strength, it was about reading the land, respecting its rules, and moving in harmony with its dangers. The morning hunt continued, each moment a new test, and Kito knew that the wild had only begun to reveal its lessons. The sun climbed higher, burning off the morning mist and casting a sharper light across the plains. Kito moved carefully, crouched low, every muscle attuned to the subtle vibrations of the earth beneath his feet. The herd of gazelles was still within sight, but the predator had not yet revealed itself fully. Its presence lingered like a shadow, unseen but unmistakable, a constant reminder that the savannah tolerated no mistakes. Kito slowed his pace, shifting his weight carefully to avoid snapping a twig or crushing the brittle stalks of grass. The wind carried scents in unpredictable currents, and he adjusted his route to ensure he remained downwind from both prey and predator. The heat pressed against him, and the sweat on his brow was a silent testament to the effort required to move undetected. A sudden movement to his right drew his attention, a large hyena slipping through the grass with stealth he had not expected. Its gaze flicked toward him, sharp and calculating, and for a moment Kito felt the pulse of danger spike through his veins. He froze, letting the creature pass, aware that one false move could attract the predator he had sensed earlier. The plains were a web of hidden eyes, every creature testing and being tested, every step a negotiation with survival. The gazelles shifted nervously, ears pointed, heads moving in a constant rhythm of alertness. Kito mirrored their caution, inching forward, silent and deliberate, drawing on years of training and instinct. He understood that the predator's shadow could fall anywhere, at any moment. Awareness, patience, and timing were his only tools against the unforgiving landscape. Ahead, the land rose slightly, forming a gentle ridge that provided a vantage point. Kito moved toward it cautiously, knowing that from this height he could better observe the terrain, the herd, and the predators that might be stalking from unseen cover. Every movement was deliberate, every breath was controlled. The ridge offered perspective but also exposure, and he adjusted his posture to minimize his silhouette against the golden light. As he reached the crest, Kito glimpsed the predator, a lion crouched low in the grass, body coiled, eyes fixed on the herd. The moment was tense and fleeting, a silent acknowledgement of the balance between hunter and prey. Kito remained motionless, letting the predator move past its line of sight, understanding that he was neither target nor threat in this precise moment. The savannah was alive with intention, and every living thing obeyed its rules. The encounter left him both exhilarated and cautious. He understood more deeply that survival was not about brute strength alone, but about reading the land, the creatures, and the moments in between. The plains were vast, beautiful, and merciless, and each step forward demanded unwavering focus, patience, and respect. The hunt continued, and Kito moved onward, attuned to the rhythm of the wild, knowing that the challenges of the day had only begun. The morning heat settled over the plains, and Kito moved with the patience of one who understood the delicate balance of life in the savannah. The gazelles had scattered slightly, their nervous energy palpable, and he shifted focus to smaller targets, hares, birds, and other creatures that offered sustenance without the immediate danger of large predators. Each movement was silent, precise, calculated. The terrain was uneven, dotted with small mounds and depressions that could hide both prey and predator. Kito crouched behind a slight rise, observing a hare nibbling at the tender shoots of grass. His eyes traced the pattern of its movements, predicting its next steps. The spear in his hands was an extension of his own body, and he adjusted his grip carefully, ready to act when the moment presented itself. The savannah was alive with subtle signals. A bird flitted nervously from a bush, a distant rustle hinted at the presence of a snake, and the wind carried scents that shifted with each passing second. Kito's senses were tuned to these details, every sound and movement informing his actions. The predator that had lurked earlier remained unseen but was never forgotten, a reminder that danger could strike even in moments of apparent calm. When the hare paused, its ears flicking and nose twitching, Kito moved. The motion was fluid, almost imperceptible, a silent negotiation with the land and the creature before him. The spear left his hands in a seamless motion, striking true. The hare fell, its life taken quickly and cleanly. Relief and satisfaction mingled in Kito's chest. Survival was immediate, tangible, and earned through skill and focus. Even in this small victory, the savannah demanded vigilance. The air remained charged with tension, the constant reminder that predators were never far, that one misstep could change everything. Kito retrieved his prize carefully, mindful of the tracks and signs left behind, ensuring that he did not draw unnecessary attention to himself. The rhythm of the plains dictated every action, and understanding this rhythm was essential for life. He paused briefly, scanning the horizon. The tall grasses swayed in waves, hiding the movements of larger creatures, and the distant outline of trees marked areas where danger might emerge suddenly. Each moment, each decision, carried weight. The hunt was as much about observation and patience as it was about speed and precision. Kito continued forward, the small kill secured, moving closer to the areas where larger game and greater risks awaited. The lessons of the morning were clear: awareness, patience, and respect for the land and its creatures were the foundation of survival among the Maasai. The plains were vast, unpredictable, and unforgiving, and Kito knew that the true challenges of the day were still ahead. The grasses grew taller and denser as Kito advanced, their golden tips swaying like a living sea. The air was thick with the scents of earth, water, and distant prey, but beneath them lingered something sharper, more primal, the unmistakable scent of predators. Lions, leopards, and hyenas all roamed this part of the plains, their presence invisible yet undeniable. Each step forward was a measured risk. The ground underfoot was uneven, littered with hidden mounds and depressions that could conceal anything from a crouching predator to a venomous snake. Kito adjusted his gait, keeping low, moving like a shadow. The heat of the day pressed down, but he remained focused, attuned to every subtle movement, every whisper of wind, every shift in the soundscape of the savannah. Ahead, a distant rustle signaled the movement of a herd. Kito's eyes narrowed, tracking the shapes as they shifted through the tall grass. The prey moved with a grace that was both mesmerizing and deceptive, their presence attracted attention from predators lurking in the shadows. Kito understood instinctively that he was entering a zone where the hunter could become the hunted in an instant. The sun climbed higher, casting long, sharp shadows that revealed textures and depressions in the terrain, but also exposed him to unseen eyes. A lioness moved silently through the underbrush, her golden coat blending with the dry grass. Kito sensed her presence before he saw her, the tension in the air a tangible force. The predator was patient, observing, waiting for a lapse in caution, a momentary misstep. Every movement now required absolute precision. Kito crouched, scanning the horizon, calculating paths of approach and retreat. The herd was too far to strike yet, and the predators too close to ignore. The savannah was alive with tension, every breath and heartbeat magnified in the still air. Awareness and patience were no longer just skills, they were survival. A sudden noise, a branch snapping under an unseen foot, made the gazelle startle, and the predator's body tensed. Kito froze, blending perfectly with the grass, his heart pounding in rhythm with the pulse of the land. In these moments, he understood fully the fragility of life in the wild. One wrong step, one misjudgment, could turn the hunter into prey. The predator remained still, coiled and silent, a shadow among shadows. Kito's body mirrored its caution, every muscle ready, every sense alert. The plains had revealed their first true test of the day, and he was learning once again that survival required respect, patience, and an unyielding awareness of the world around him. The hunt, and the lessons of the savannah, were far from over. The sun had risen fully, casting a warm, golden glow across the plains. Kito moved with careful deliberation, every step measured to avoid snapping twigs or disturbing the tall grasses. Ahead, he spotted a large herd of wildebeests grazing near a shallow depression. Their massive bodies seemed almost oblivious to the dangers surrounding them, but Kito knew better: predators were never far, and even a momentary lapse could bring chaos. The terrain became more challenging. Small ridges and hidden depressions created pockets of concealment for both prey and predators. Kito crouched low, using every mound and swaying stalk as cover. The heat of the sun pressed against his back, and the dry air carried the faint scent of dust and fur. Each movement required full attention, each breath calculated. The savannah offered no guarantees, only opportunities for those who could read its subtle signals. A distant rustle signaled movement among the wildebeests. Kito paused, analyzing the direction and rhythm of the herd's activity. Their hooves pressed into soft earth, leaving faint impressions that told the story of their recent passage. Kito's eyes scanned the surroundings for predators, the hidden threats waiting in shadows. Lions crouched in the distance, hyenas prowled the edges, and every movement could trigger a chase that none could escape unscathed. As he drew closer, Kito observed the subtle signs of tension in the herd: raised heads, twitching tails, and ears that pivoted toward every sound. The presence of predators was sensed by the prey, though invisible to him at first. Awareness was a shared instinct, a rhythm of life on the plains that bound all creatures together in the unspoken rules of survival. Kito adjusted his approach, shifting his weight, lowering his center of gravity, moving with patience that had been drilled into him since childhood. The spear in his hand was light but lethal, an extension of his will and focus. One wrong move could alert both the wildebeests and the predators, and the consequences could be fatal. The balance of life and death was fragile here, hanging on a knife edge of instinct, skill, and timing. The distant roar of a lion echoed across the plains, vibrating through the air and the ground. The predator was close, unseen, yet its presence was undeniable. Kito remained crouched, blending into the landscape, his heartbeat steady but intense. Every moment now was a negotiation with danger, the herd's movements, the predator's vigilance, and his own need to survive and provide. The wildebeests shifted, the distant predators adjusted, and Kito inched forward with the patience of someone who understood that the plains demanded respect above all else. The hunt was no longer about small victories, it was a delicate dance with the forces of life and death, where timing, awareness, and instinct could mean the difference between survival and disaster. The herd of wildebeests moved with subtle tension, each animal aware of the invisible eyes watching from the grass and trees. Kito crouched low, inching forward with painstaking care, his eyes scanning for both prey and hidden predators. Every sense was alive, every muscle taut with anticipation. The plains were a landscape of constant negotiation, and one misstep could turn hunter into hunted in an instant. The golden grasses swayed, hiding movement and creating shadows that shifted with the wind. Kito's focus sharpened, he read the undulations of the terrain like a map, noting every ridge, depression, and tuft of grass that could conceal danger. The scent of predators was stronger here: lion, leopard, hyena, a blend of raw power and latent threat that made the air itself seem charged. A rustle to his left caused him to freeze completely. A lioness slinked through the shadows, her eyes fixed on the herd as she moved with the lethal grace of a predator at the height of her focus. Kito's heart thumped in rhythm with the pulse of the savannah, each beat a reminder that his life was as fragile as that of the prey before him. The predator paused, muscles coiled, sensing the presence of another moving entity, though it did not yet identify him. Kito shifted slightly, using the tall grass to obscure his silhouette, maintaining a careful balance between approach and concealment. The herd grazed, unaware of both the predator and the human shadow moving among them. His spear felt heavier with tension, a lifeline and a tool, ready to defend, survive, or strike if necessary. Every step was a calculation. The savannah offered no second chances, no room for hesitation. Kito's instincts guided him forward, translating subtle environmental cues, the sway of grass, the position of shadows, the distant calls of birds, into a strategy for movement. The lioness remained an unseen force, a reminder of the fragility of life and the precision demanded by survival. The distant roar of another lion added urgency to the moment. The predators were converging subtly, their awareness of the prey heightened. Kito understood that the balance of the hunt had shifted, the wildebeests were becoming restless, and the presence of multiple predators increased the risk of exposure. Patience was crucial. One wrong move, one crack of a branch, could trigger chaos, and he needed to be ready. The plains seemed suspended in anticipation, every creature a participant in a silent contest of life and death. Kito felt the weight of his choices pressing down, the unspoken responsibility to survive and to respect the unforgiving laws of the savannah. The hunt had moved into a more dangerous phase, where awareness alone could mean the difference between life and death. The herd of wildebeests had moved closer to a sparse grove of acacia trees, where shadows offered cover but also concealed potential threats. Kito crouched low, every muscle coiled like a spring, eyes fixed on the nearest large animal. The heat of the day pressed down, the sun glaring off the dry earth, but his focus was absolute. Survival required attention, timing, and respect for the unpredictable rhythm of the savannah. The distant roar of a lion vibrated through the plains, a subtle reminder that the predator was still near, unseen but present. Kito shifted slightly, careful to avoid snapping any hidden twigs, and moved with a fluid, deliberate rhythm. The herd was tense, their instinctive awareness mirrored his own. Every twitch of an ear, every subtle movement of a tail, carried meaning. He chose a route that took advantage of the taller grasses, each step a negotiation with the earth beneath him. The shadows provided concealment, but also increased uncertainty. Predators could be lurking anywhere, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Kito's spear was light in his hands, poised not just for attack but for defense, ready to react if the balance shifted suddenly. The wildebeests grazed, unaware of the human shadow moving closer. Kito adjusted his position again, lowering his body, shifting his weight to remain undetected. Each breath was controlled, each heartbeat a measure of patience. The savannah itself seemed to pulse in rhythm with the tension in the air, every living thing attuned to the delicate balance between safety and peril. A sudden rustle to his right made Kito freeze. A hyena had picked up the scent of the herd, its movements cautious, deliberate, but intent. The predator paused, sniffing the air, its gaze scanning the surroundings. Kito remained motionless, blending perfectly with the grass, understanding that his survival depended on remaining invisible until the precise moment of action. The first step toward the wildebeests was bold, calculated. Kito inched closer, using the terrain, the shadows, and the movement of the herd to mask his approach. The sun beat down, sweat stinging his eyes, but the heat did not break his focus. Every second stretched, every step carried weight, as he moved in harmony with the land, the animals, and the ever-present threat of predators. The moment of tension hung thick in the air, the plains holding their breath as predator, prey, and human observer converged in a silent contest of skill and instinct. Kito knew that this first bold move could define the day, success would bring sustenance and survival, a misstep could unleash chaos and danger beyond control. Kito's movements became even more deliberate as he approached the edge of the herd's grazing ground. The tall grasses swayed in the breeze, hiding both prey and predator, creating a shifting mosaic of opportunity and risk. Each step forward was a negotiation with the land, the unseen eyes of lions, leopards, and hyenas watching his every move. The savannah's pulse was palpable, a rhythm of life and death that Kito had learned to feel in his bones. The largest wildebeest, a massive bull with curved horns and a wary gaze, grazed near the center of the herd. Kito calculated the distance, the angle of approach, the cover provided by the undulating terrain. Every muscle was taut, every nerve alert. The predator's presence lingered in the air, a silent tension that pressed on him as heavily as the midday sun. A sudden snapping of a branch nearby made Kito freeze instantly. A lioness had emerged from the shadows, her eyes scanning the plains with predatory focus. She had not noticed him yet, but Kito knew that her patience was lethal. The balance of life and death rested on his ability to remain unseen, to move as though he were part of the landscape itself. The herd shifted nervously, sensing the presence of danger. The bull's ears flicked back, his muscles coiled, ready to bolt. Kito mirrored their caution, crouching lower, adjusting his grip on the spear. Every movement was measured, every breath controlled. The slightest disturbance could trigger a stampede, attract the predator, or expose Kito himself to immediate risk. He inched closer, taking advantage of the shadows and the natural contours of the land. The heat of the day was oppressive, sweat stinging his eyes, but he did not falter. Awareness and patience were as important as speed and strength. The savannah had taught him that survival required mastering both the land and oneself. A distant roar echoed across the plains, another lion asserting its presence. The predator's shadow lengthened across the golden grasses, a stark reminder that life here was never guaranteed. Kito remained still, observing the herd, noting every shift in posture, every flick of the tail, every sign of tension. The moment demanded complete focus, the kind that separated the prepared from the unprepared. The edge of danger had arrived, the zone where predator, prey, and human converged. Kito felt the weight of the savannah pressing down, the unspoken laws of life and death vibrating through the ground beneath him. One misstep now could unravel everything, yet he pressed forward, determined, patient, and aware, moving as quietly as the wind that brushed the tall grasses. Kito's body remained low to the ground, muscles coiled, eyes scanning the herd for subtle signs of movement. The massive bull wildebeest grazed unaware of the human shadow that crept closer, yet the predator's presence lingered nearby, unseen but palpably threatening. Every nerve in Kito's body was alive with awareness, the faint brush of wind, the distant rustle of grass, even the trembling of the earth under the herd's hooves spoke to him in ways words could not. He chose a risky path, a slight ridge that would bring him closer to the bull while offering limited cover. The grass here was thinner, exposing him to the predator's keen senses if he moved too hastily. Kito measured every step, pressing forward slowly, timing his motion with the sway of the grass and the rhythm of the herd. One wrong move could draw both the bull's attention and that of the lioness stalking nearby. A low growl vibrated through the air, almost imperceptible but enough to make Kito pause. The lioness had shifted position, creeping closer to the herd, her focus unwavering. Kito froze, blending seamlessly with the golden grasses, heart hammering but body still. Awareness was his lifeline now, patience and timing would determine whether he survived this first true encounter with a large predator in the wild. The herd's tension grew, bodies shifting slightly, hooves pressing into soft earth with subtle, almost silent rhythms. Kito mirrored their movements, crouching lower, adjusting his weight, letting his instincts guide the pace. Sweat ran down his brow, but he ignored it, concentrating entirely on the delicate dance unfolding between hunter and prey, and his own precarious position within it. He advanced a few more meters, the bull now clearly within range. The predator remained a silent shadow, coiled, ready to strike, its presence forcing Kito to move with absolute precision. Each step was calculated, each movement deliberate, a negotiation with the savannah itself. The balance was delicate, the slightest misjudgment could provoke chaos, triggering the predator or spooking the herd. For a moment, everything froze. The wind shifted, carrying scents that exposed the interconnected dangers of the plains. Kito adjusted, breathing slowly, blending into the rhythm of the land. The risk he had taken was immense, yet necessary. The lessons of the Maasai were clear: survival required courage, patience, and respect for the lethal precision of the wild. As the bull continued grazing, unaware of the danger close at hand, Kito prepared for the next phase of the hunt. The predator's shadow remained, a reminder that his presence was not yet secure. Every sense heightened, every muscle ready, he waited for the precise moment to act, understanding that life on the plains was defined by these fleeting seconds, where instinct, skill, and awareness determined survival. The bull wildebeest stood only a few meters away now, massive and imposing, muscles rippling beneath its thick hide. Kito's breath was steady but shallow, every sense sharpened to the peak of awareness. The lioness remained hidden, a silent predator coiled in the grass, her gaze locked on the herd. Kito knew that this next step would test the limits of his patience, skill, and nerve. He shifted slightly, using a low mound as cover, inching closer to the bull. The dry earth crunched faintly beneath his foot, but the sound was masked by the soft stir of grass and distant bird calls. Every movement was calculated, every adjustment of weight was a negotiation with life and death. The savannah demanded perfection in this delicate dance, and Kito had learned that hesitation or error could mean instant failure. The bull flicked its ears and raised its head, nostrils flaring as it sensed something unfamiliar. Kito froze, melding into the shadows of the grass, motionless as the predator nearby. The lioness shifted as well, coiling closer to the prey, her presence an invisible pressure that added urgency and danger to every step. Kito advanced another few meters, careful to move with the rhythm of the grass, letting the wind carry his scent away from both prey and predator. Sweat stung his eyes, and his muscles ached, but the focus never wavered. Each heartbeat was measured, each breath controlled, every sense tuned to detect the slightest movement that could spell disaster. The wildebeest began to graze again, unaware of the human shadow closing in. Kito lowered his spear, ready to act, yet he waited for the perfect alignment, one moment of vulnerability, one opening that would allow success without alerting the lioness. The tension of the plains pressed in from all sides, a living force that demanded respect, patience, and courage. A sudden movement, a branch snapping under a distant paw, made Kito freeze instantly. The predator had shifted. The lioness's attention flicked slightly, and for a heartbeat, the fragile balance hung in the air. Kito remained motionless, heart hammering, muscles coiled, understanding that the next seconds would define whether he survived this phase of the hunt. The first real risk had arrived. Every step forward was now a negotiation with both prey and predator, a test of instinct, skill, and timing. Kito had entered the true heart of the savannah, where life and death were separated by invisible threads, and the lessons of the Maasai came alive in the most visceral and unforgiving way imaginable. Kito's muscles were coiled, his senses stretched to the breaking point. The bull wildebeest was within striking distance, yet the predator's presence cast a silent shadow over the entire hunt. The savannah had grown alive with tension, the golden grasses vibrating subtly under the rhythm of unseen forces. One wrong movement could trigger disaster, either the herd stampeding or the lioness turning her gaze on him. He inched forward slowly, matching the sway of the tall grasses, blending his silhouette with the patterns of light and shadow. Every step was calculated, every shift of weight a negotiation with the unpredictable earth beneath him. The dry soil crunched faintly underfoot, yet the sound was muffled by the rustle of the wind. Kito's heartbeat echoed the silent pulse of the plains, steady and deliberate despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. The bull raised its head, nostrils flaring, muscles tensing as it sensed something foreign in the air. Kito froze completely, remaining motionless as the predator in the grass adjusted its own position. The lioness's golden eyes gleamed through the swaying blades, and Kito felt the invisible pressure of her attention, testing his patience and skill. He advanced a few more meters, crouching lower, shifting carefully to avoid detection. The sun beat down, sweat stinging his eyes, but his focus never wavered. Every element, the herd's behavior, the predator's movements, the rhythm of the wind, was part of the calculus that would determine whether he survived the next moments. A subtle snap nearby caused Kito to pause instantly. The lioness's head lifted slightly, ears pivoting, muscles rippling beneath her sleek coat. The bull's ears twitched in response, tension coiling in its body. Kito remained frozen, the world around him reduced to a sequence of subtle signals and silent communications. Awareness and patience were now his only weapons. He took the first truly dangerous step, forward toward the bull, relying on instinct, rhythm, and precision. Every inch brought him closer to potential success and potential disaster simultaneously. The plains themselves seemed to hold their breath, the fragile balance of predator, prey, and human observer hanging by a single thread. In that instant, Kito understood fully that survival was not guaranteed by strength alone. It required patience, focus, respect for the land, and an unyielding understanding of the intricate web of life and death that governed the savannah. This step, risky as it was, marked the first moment where he had truly stepped into the heart of the hunt, and into the unrelenting reality of life among the Maasai. The air seemed to thicken around Kito, each second stretched by the tension of the hunt. The bull wildebeest grazed closer to the center of the herd, massive and imposing, yet unaware of the human shadow creeping toward it. The lioness in the grass had shifted, now coiled and alert, muscles rippling as if feeling the precise moment to strike. The savannah held its breath, the delicate balance of predator, prey, and observer hanging by a thread. Kito moved cautiously, each step synchronized with the gentle sway of the tall grasses. The earth beneath him was uneven, riddled with hidden dips and tufts of grass that could conceal sudden dangers. Sweat ran down his back, stinging his eyes, but he remained fully concentrated on the rhythm of the plains. Awareness was his lifeline, patience and instinct his only shields. The lioness's ears twitched, and her body coiled tighter. She had sensed something, movement, scent, life, and Kito knew the margin for error had shrunk. Any sudden motion could alert her or the wildebeests, transforming the carefully controlled hunt into chaos. The plains were merciless, and predators required nothing less than perfection from those who walked among them. He shifted position slightly, using a low mound as cover, moving in precise increments. The bull's massive head rose slightly, nostrils flaring, scanning the horizon. The herd's muscles tensed, aware of something beyond their comprehension, yet unable to pinpoint the exact threat. Kito mirrored their caution, lowering himself further, letting instinct guide every inch of motion. A distant roar echoed across the savannah, vibrating through the earth and into Kito's core. Another lion, perhaps a male, had entered the vicinity. The predator's presence made the hunt infinitely more dangerous. The wildebeests could panic at any moment, and the human in their midst risked being caught in the crossfire. Every fiber of Kito's body screamed caution, yet he pressed forward, knowing the only path to survival was awareness and deliberate action. The first major risk of the hunt had arrived. Kito was now deep within the zone of the predators, each step forward a negotiation with life and death. The bull grazed within reach, the lioness's shadow hovered nearby, and the plains themselves seemed alive with anticipation. Kito understood fully that one misstep could mean the end of the hunt, or worse, his own life. He held his spear tightly, muscles coiled, eyes fixed on the target, ears alert to the faintest sound. The predator had awakened, the herd was tense, and the human hunter had entered the heart of danger. Every moment now demanded complete awareness, patience, and respect for the lethal forces surrounding him. The savannah was no longer just a landscape, it was a test, and Kito was at its center. Kito crouched low, the massive bull wildebeest now only a few meters away. The air was tense, heavy with the scents of grass, dust, and predator. The lioness remained hidden, her golden eyes tracking every movement, muscles coiled like springs. Each breath Kito took was measured, each shift of weight a negotiation with the savannah itself. One wrong move could shatter the fragile balance, sending the herd into flight and attracting the predator's lethal attention. He inched forward slowly, letting the rhythm of the grass guide him, his eyes fixed on the bull's shifting stance. The animal's ears twitched constantly, nostrils flaring as it sensed subtle disturbances. Kito mirrored the herd's awareness, blending into the landscape, every muscle prepared to respond instantly. The sun beat down relentlessly, but the heat did not break his focus. The lioness shifted slightly, a subtle movement that rippled through the air like a warning. Kito froze, letting the predator pass over his shadow, understanding that survival depended on remaining invisible until the precise moment to act. His heart pounded, each beat a reminder of the razor-thin margin between success and disaster. Another step brought him closer, the bull's massive form dominating the small clearing. Kito's spear felt like an extension of his will, light in his hands yet capable of decisive action. The slightest rustle in the grass, the faintest vibration underfoot, could alert both the prey and the predator. Patience was paramount, timing would determine the outcome. The herd remained largely unaware, but the tension in the air was palpable. Kito's eyes flicked between the wildebeest and the shadows where the lioness lurked. The predator's presence forced him to act with both caution and precision. Every inch gained brought him closer to his target, yet deeper into danger. Sweat stung his eyes, and his muscles ached from maintaining the low stance, yet he pressed forward. The first close contact with his prey had arrived, and he understood fully that this was the moment the plains demanded his full skill, awareness, and courage. The savannah, alive with predators and prey, had now drawn him into its most delicate, dangerous dance. The bull grazed unaware, the lioness's shadow pressed nearby, and Kito crouched, ready to close the final gap. Every element, the sun, the wind, the rustle of the grass, the heartbeat of predator and prey, was part of the calculus of survival. The first real test of courage and skill was upon him, and the consequences of error were unthinkable. Kito inched forward, crouched low, the bull wildebeest now only meters away. The golden grasses around him swayed with the breeze, concealing his shadow, yet the presence of the lioness lingered like a silent threat. Every movement demanded precision, every breath controlled. The savannah had transformed into a living entity, watching and testing him at every step. The bull shifted slightly, hooves pressing into the dry earth, muscles tensing as it sensed a disturbance. Kito froze, blending into the swaying grass, his spear ready. The lioness's eyes gleamed faintly through the shadows, her body coiled, radiating lethal patience. Kito felt the pressure of her presence like a physical weight, and yet he could not retreat. One false move now would jeopardize everything. He adjusted his position carefully, lowering his profile and letting the natural rise and fall of the terrain obscure his advance. Each step forward was measured, synchronized with the rhythm of the plains. The predator shifted slightly, and Kito held his breath, feeling the tension stretch between life and death. Every instinct, every training exercise he had undergone, now guided his actions. The bull's head lowered again, grazing, but tension coiled in its massive shoulders. Kito mirrored its cautious movements, inching forward another step, his focus absolute. The heat of the sun pressed down, sweat stinging his eyes, but he ignored it, aware that the slightest lapse could alert both the prey and the predator. A distant roar echoed from the horizon, another lion entering the area. The sound vibrated through the earth, sending subtle tremors that Kito could feel beneath his feet. He paused, crouched in the grass, understanding that the hunt had entered a heightened stage of danger. The predators were not idle anymore, the savannah itself had awakened fully. Every motion became deliberate, a negotiation with the land, the prey, and the predators. Kito felt the tension in every fiber of his being, the weight of each heartbeat pressing down as he approached the bull. He knew that survival now relied on absolute awareness, patience, and the perfect timing of action. The first real close encounter had arrived. Kito's senses screamed caution, yet he pressed onward, merging with the grasses, blending into the rhythm of the plains. The lioness's shadow hovered nearby, the bull was within reach, and the savannah itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see if he would succeed, or fail. Kito crouched just a few meters from the massive bull wildebeest, every sense sharpened to the limits of perception. The golden grasses swayed around him, hiding his shadow, while the lioness remained a coiled presence, her eyes tracking every subtle movement. The air was thick with tension, each heartbeat echoing like a drum in the still plains. He adjusted his grip on the spear, feeling its weight as an extension of his will. The bull shifted slightly, its massive muscles rippling beneath thick hide. Kito's body tensed, ready to react instantly to any change. The predator nearby had not moved yet, but its presence was a constant reminder of the razor-thin margin between life and death. A slight breeze carried the scent of Kito toward the wildebeest. The bull raised its head, nostrils flaring, ears twitching. Kito froze, motionless, blending perfectly with the grass. Every instinct screamed caution, every nerve was alive with awareness. One misstep now could alert both the prey and the predator, with potentially fatal consequences. Slowly, he shifted his weight, inching closer with deliberate precision. The lioness twitched, muscles coiled, sensing the movement. Kito felt the pressure of her gaze, a silent force that seemed to bind him to the earth, forcing every movement to be deliberate and exact. The savannah demanded perfection, and he could not falter. Finally, the distance was close enough for a strike. Kito's grip tightened, spear poised. He could feel the tension in the air, the quiet rhythm of predator, prey, and human converging. The bull's attention was divided, grazing yet wary, and the lioness's shadow remained a constant threat. Every second stretched, each breath measured, as Kito prepared to act. The first strike required patience and timing. Kito shifted slightly, letting the rhythm of the wind and the sway of the grasses guide him. The predator had not yet reacted, the bull was within range. The plain seemed to pause, holding its collective breath, as Kito prepared to execute the culmination of his careful approach. This was the first real test of courage, skill, and awareness in the heart of the savannah. The line between success and disaster was razor thin, and Kito's next action would determine whether he survived the encounter, or became another lesson written in the unforgiving sands of the plains. Kito lunged forward with measured force, spear aimed with precision at the massive bull wildebeest. The movement was fluid, almost imperceptible, a seamless extension of the countless hours of practice and instinct guiding him. The bull shifted abruptly, muscles tensing as the first touch of danger reached its awareness. Kito froze for a heartbeat, allowing the natural rhythm of the plains to mask his presence. The spear found its mark, grazing the bull in a glancing strike. The animal bolted, hooves pounding the dry earth, a shockwave of motion rippling through the herd. Dust rose into the air, mingling with the sense of fear and tension. The lioness reacted instantly, leaping from her hidden position, muscles coiled as she lunged toward the commotion. Her focus was absolute, yet Kito had anticipated this. Every movement was timed to avoid drawing her attention directly to himself. The plains erupted into controlled chaos. Wildebeest stampeded, hooves shaking the ground, their movements unpredictable yet patterned in a way only those attuned could read. Kito moved with them, blending into the rhythm of flight, ready to exploit any opening while keeping a careful watch on the predator's shadow. The lioness chased the herd, not noticing the human presence that had skillfully instigated the moment. Kito's heart pounded in tandem with the hooves of the wildebeests. Each second was a dance with danger, requiring acute awareness and rapid calculation. The dust, heat, and movement combined into a whirlwind of sensory input, and he had to navigate through it all without losing focus. One misstep could draw the lioness's attention directly to him, and survival would depend on his speed and instinct. The bull, spurred by the strike, led the herd toward a narrow gap in the terrain, where Kito could observe and anticipate the next phase. His spear was ready for a follow-up, yet he understood that patience was as crucial as action. The predator's hunt had begun, and Kito had ignited it, but his role was to survive alongside it, reading the land, the prey, and the predator as one continuous flow of life and death. The plains were alive in a way that few humans could comprehend. Dust swirled, hooves drummed, predators moved with lethal grace, and Kito stood at the center of it all, balancing skill, instinct, and patience. This first strike had revealed the delicate, brutal truths of the savannah. One action could trigger a chain of events where every living being was tested, and survival depended on timing, awareness, and respect for the wild. The herd surged forward, hooves striking the earth like thunder, dust clouding the air. Kito moved with them, crouched low, muscles taut, heart hammering in rhythm with the stampede. The bull wildebeest led the charge toward a narrow pass between two ridges, a place that could either conceal him or trap him entirely. The lioness followed relentlessly, her sleek body weaving through the chaos, eyes fixed on the largest prey. Kito adjusted quickly, slipping behind a low rise as the dust and movement of the herd masked his presence. The roar of the predator vibrated through the air, a stark reminder of the lethal precision surrounding him. Every step required calculation, every breath could betray him. The savannah was unforgiving, and Kito felt the raw weight of its rules pressing against his very being. The herd split abruptly, sending the bull off in a different direction. Kito's eyes followed, noting the terrain, the ridges, and the patches of cover. The lioness reacted instantly, muscles coiled as she darted toward the fleeing prey. Kito froze, timing his movement with the predator's gaze and the rhythm of the stampede. One wrong motion could expose him directly to the predator, and he understood that there was no room for error. He rolled low behind another mound, letting the dust and chaos shield him. The sound of pounding hooves echoed in his ears, mixing with the distant roar of another lion claiming its territory. Kito's pulse raced, yet his movements remained precise, deliberate, almost invisible. Awareness, patience, and timing were his only weapons in this deadly dance. The bull disappeared briefly into a thicket of acacia and scrub, the herd scattering and reforming in unpredictable patterns. The lioness leapt, striking at the tail of the herd, but the terrain slowed her momentum. Kito seized the opportunity, inching closer to solid ground while remaining out of the predator's direct line of sight. The savannah demanded cunning and instinct, and Kito had begun to master both in the crucible of survival. Every step brought him closer to safety, yet danger lurked at every edge. The predator was active, the prey unpredictable, and the land itself a test of agility and awareness. Kito moved with deliberate care, fully immersed in the rhythm of the plains, understanding that life here was earned through skill, observation, and respect for the brutal laws that governed every creature. The plains had erupted into a chaotic symphony of motion. The bull wildebeest pressed forward through uneven terrain, the herd scattering in all directions. Kito moved with careful agility, keeping low, every muscle coiled with tension, every sense alert. The lioness remained a silent, lethal presence, her golden eyes tracking the largest prey as shadows of other predators shifted in the distance. Dust and heat blurred the horizon, the pounding of hooves creating vibrations that resonated through the ground beneath Kito's feet. He adjusted his path constantly, using rises and depressions to stay concealed, blending into the natural rhythm of the terrain. The savannah demanded precision, one false step could bring the predator's gaze directly upon him. The bull turned abruptly, horns catching the sunlight, muscles tensing as it sought safer ground. Kito followed, calculating the path with care. Every movement of the herd created unpredictable opportunities, and he had to navigate between cover and exposure. Awareness of the environment, the prey, and the predators had become an instinctive, almost unconscious part of his being. The lioness reacted instantly to the bull's shift, sprinting through the grass with lethal grace. Kito paused behind a ridge, watching the predator's movements, reading the subtle signals in its body, the tightening of muscles, the flick of an ear, the twitch of a tail. Each detail informed his next move, guiding him through the chaos without drawing attention. A distant roar echoed, signaling the presence of a second predator entering the area. The bull bolted toward a patch of denser vegetation, and the herd followed in a wave of coordinated panic. Kito adjusted his trajectory, moving closer to solid ground while avoiding the predator's line of sight. Every step required calculation, every breath controlled. The savannah was alive with danger and motion. Predators and prey interacted in a fluid, deadly dance, and Kito was immersed fully in its rhythm. Each second stretched into eternity, each choice carried weight. Survival depended on reading the environment, anticipating motion, and acting with skill that balanced patience and boldness. As the herd moved toward safer terrain, Kito felt the pulse of the plains, the invisible threads connecting predator, prey, and human. The hunt was escalating, danger growing with every step, yet he pressed onward, determined to navigate the chaos, respect the land, and survive the unrelenting trial of the Maasai wilderness. Kito pressed forward, crouched low, muscles taut, every sense attuned to the chaos around him. The bull wildebeest had surged toward a narrow ravine, the herd splitting to navigate the uneven terrain. The lioness and other predators moved in perfect, lethal synchrony, coiling and leaping with instinctive precision. Kito understood that he was now on the brink of the most dangerous phase of the hunt. The air was thick with dust and tension. Hooves pounded the dry earth, creating vibrations that traveled into Kito's legs, signaling the herd's every sudden move. The predator's eyes glinted through the golden grasses, their muscles rippling as they read the same rhythm. One false move from him could draw their attention, and survival would depend entirely on timing, awareness, and instinct. He advanced carefully, using ridges and small depressions as cover, keeping low and blending into the landscape. The bull's path was unpredictable, yet Kito had learned to read the subtle cues, the flick of its tail, the tension in its shoulders, the movement of its head. The predator's shadows pressed closer, yet he moved in synchronization with the natural flow, maintaining a delicate balance between action and concealment. The lioness reacted to a sudden shift in the herd, sprinting in pursuit with lethal grace. Kito paused behind a mound, muscles coiled, heartbeat steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. The narrow ravine ahead offered both risk and opportunity, an opening for action, but also a potential trap. One miscalculation could result in exposure, or worse, a direct confrontation with the predator. Sweat stung his eyes, and the heat pressed down, but Kito's focus remained absolute. Every step was measured, every breath controlled. The plains themselves seemed to hold their collective breath, the golden grasses swaying gently around him, the distant roars and pounding hooves echoing like a living drumbeat of survival. Kito had reached the brink of risk. The bull was within reach, predators coiled nearby, and the terrain demanded precision and awareness. Every instinct, every lesson learned among the Maasai, now converged in this single moment. One decisive action, executed perfectly, could determine the outcome of the hunt, and the fragile thread of survival that connected him to the land, the prey, and the predators alike. Kito crouched low at the edge of the ravine, the bull wildebeest only meters away. The herd had scattered, and the predators pressed in from multiple angles, their shadows moving with lethal precision across the golden grass. Every fiber of Kito's being was tuned to the rhythm of the plains, every sense alert to the subtle shifts in movement and scent. He took a slow, calculated step forward, each inch measured against the terrain and the positioning of both prey and predator. The bull's muscles tensed, nostrils flaring, as it sensed a subtle disturbance. Kito froze for a heartbeat, allowing the natural sway of the grass and the distant commotion of the stampede to mask his presence. The lioness remained coiled in the shadows, a living test of patience and precision. The ground beneath him was uneven, dotted with hidden tufts of grass and small ridges that could conceal or betray him. Kito shifted slightly, using a mound for cover, blending completely with the environment. His spear felt like an extension of his body, every movement calculated for maximum effect with minimum risk. The heat pressed down, sweat stinging his eyes, but his focus never wavered. The bull moved slightly, changing its angle, the tension in its body palpable. The predators were adjusting as well, coiling tighter, reacting to the herd's chaotic motion. Kito mirrored their awareness, timing his next movement to align with the natural rhythm of the plains. The decision was critical, one wrong move now could alert the lioness or the bull, turning the delicate balance into deadly chaos. He shifted again, closer, muscles coiled, spear ready. The wind carried sense, dust rose with every pounding hoof, and the world seemed suspended in the narrow margin between life and death. Kito's training, instinct, and awareness converged in this single moment, guiding him through the most dangerous step of the hunt so far. Every heartbeat was a negotiation, every breath measured. The bull was within reach, the lioness's shadow hovered near, and Kito knew that the next moment would define the outcome of this encounter. The savannah demanded nothing less than perfection, and he was poised to act with precision, courage, and skill in the face of relentless, living danger. Kito froze for a heartbeat, muscles coiled like springs, spear poised. The bull wildebeest shifted slightly, nostrils flaring, its massive body radiating raw power. The lioness crouched nearby, eyes locked, ready to strike. Dust swirled around them, stirred by the stampeding herd and the subtle movement of the wind. Time seemed to stretch, each second magnified in the tension that gripped the savannah. He advanced carefully, using the natural contours of the land to obscure his movement. The bull's ears flicked, tail twitching, but it had not yet identified him as the immediate threat. The predators, however, had sensed the disturbance, muscles tensed, ready to exploit any sudden opportunity. The margin for error had shrunk to almost nothing. Kito's hand tightened on the spear, feeling its weight, the balance, the potential. He moved forward, inches at a time, each motion deliberate. The bull's massive legs tensed, ready to bolt, but Kito mirrored its rhythm, slipping into the flow of movement without drawing attention. The lioness reacted to the stir in the grass, coiling tighter, but Kito had calculated the timing perfectly. With a careful thrust, he grazed the bull, a precise touch meant to test and guide its direction. The animal bolted immediately, powerful legs propelling it forward, sending the herd into further chaotic motion. The lioness leapt after the herd, a shadow of lethal grace, yet Kito remained unseen, moving low, blending with the rhythm of the plains. The air vibrated with the pounding of hooves, the rustle of grass, and the distant roar of predators staking territory. Kito's senses were sharpened to their maximum, every sound, movement, and vibration informed his next step. He was fully immersed in the living, breathing world of the savannah, where life and death balanced on every decision. The first close contact had been made. The bull had reacted, the predators had awakened fully, and Kito remained in the delicate center of the hunt. He had navigated the most dangerous steps of approach, blending courage, instinct, and skill, yet the hunt was not over. The savannah's lesson was ongoing. Survival demanded constant awareness, respect for the predators, and understanding the unpredictable rhythms of life in the wild. The dust began to settle, the thunder of hooves fading as the herd moved deeper into the cover of the savannah. Kito remained crouched, muscles trembling from tension, sweat running into his eyes, heart pounding like a drum. The lioness had pursued the fleeing herd but had not detected him. Her shadow receded into the golden grass, leaving him alive yet acutely aware of how close the danger had been. The bull, the focus of his careful stalking, had disappeared into the thicket, safe for now, yet Kito knew it would not remain stationary for long. The predator's presence reminded him that the plains were never forgiving. Every step, every movement, every breath could tip the balance from survival to death. And yet, he had moved with patience, awareness, and respect, navigating the deadly dance with instinct and skill. He finally allowed himself to rise slowly, muscles aching, senses still on high alert. The wind carried the scents of dust, sweat, and predator across the plains. Kito felt the weight of the savannah pressing in, its rules unyielding and exacting. Survival here was not guaranteed by strength alone, it required knowledge, timing, courage, and respect for the web of life that connected hunter, prey, and predator. Kito took a few careful steps, allowing himself to observe the aftermath. The plains were alive again, the predators slinking back into the shadows, the herd grazing cautiously at a safer distance. Every movement he had made, every decision, had been tested, yet he had endured. The experience left him both humbled and exhilarated, an understanding of the raw, uncompromising beauty of life among the Maasai. He sank to the ground for a moment, catching his breath, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath him. The savannah had taught him a profound lesson. Life here demanded respect, attentiveness, and the courage to act even when the outcome was uncertain. The delicate balance of predator, prey, and human had revealed itself fully, and Kito knew he had earned not just survival, but a deeper connection to the land and its rhythms. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting the plains in a warm, golden glow, Kito allowed himself a moment of reflection. The hunt had tested him to his limits, but he had emerged alive, wiser, and more attuned to the dangerous, breathtaking reality of life in the Maasai lands. The savannah was not conquered, it was understood, moment by moment, with respect and vigilance, a lesson that would stay with him forever. The day had been a crucible of instinct, courage, and survival. Kito rose once more, ready to return to his people, carrying the experience of the hunt and the wisdom of the Maasai lands deep within him, knowing that the lessons of the plains were not just about survival, they were about understanding life itself in its rawest, most magnificent form.